So, everybody, welcome to this, the first edition of the Because I Can podcast. Paul and I, we were wondering, we'll talk about who we are shortly, but we were kind of wondering, how on earth do you introduce a podcast? Never done it before, weirdly. Stood in front of loads of people, never done a podcast before. So what I thought I would do at this stage is take you back a bit and tell you a story. And I want you to imagine, if you can, that it's 4 o'clock in the morning. It's pretty cold. You're feeling a little bit low. Morale is a bit flat. Only you're not sitting in Starbucks. You're actually sitting in a cookhouse on Camp Bastion in the middle of Afghanistan. And perhaps I should give you a bit of background. Camp Bastion at the time was the size of Reading. And I was working for a military unit, disconnected pretty much to Camp Bastion and everything else we were doing. And you're feeling pretty lonely and pretty flat. You think, God, what I wouldn't give to see one of my mates right now. And anyway, you're fairly tired. And you look up and you look into the doorway of the cookhouse that you're sitting in. And you think to yourself, I'm pretty sure that's Paul. And then you kind of look back down at your watch and you go, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. What are you talking about? There's literally no way on earth that can be Paul in the same cookhouse as me at 4 o'clock in the morning in the middle of Afghanistan. Only Paul, it turns out that it was you that walked through the door in the cookhouse in Afghanistan at 4 o'clock in the morning. And we had probably still to this day, the best cup of coffee I've ever had. And I have no idea what a coffee tasted like. I can't remember, but I do remember sharing a cup of coffee with you at 4 in the morning and lifting morale. So what on earth were you doing walking into the cookhouse at 4 o'clock in the morning in Afghanistan?
That was a ridiculous morning. I was out in Afghanistan as well, but I was out in a titchy little base, little PB in the desert, and just had to come back to Bastion for a quick meeting with the big grown-ups. And the earliest helicopter ride I could get was really early in the morning, and I had a few hours to kill. And so I just thought, well, I'll go and grab a coffee. Where's the nearest coffee place? Walked in there. And there's Tim sitting down having breakfast. I mean, what are the odds? What are the chances? It was just amazing that the stars aligned. And to be honest, it was a great thing because I was out there. I was, away from friends, away from family. There's a lot of stuff going on, and it was just lovely to almost switch off and pretend I'm not there. I could be in the middle of London, I could be in Edinburgh, I could be anywhere, just chatting with my mate, having a cup of coffee. And for 20 minutes, half an hour, we weren't in Afghanistan. We were just, sitting there together, having a good natter and a good chat. But to be fair, I think if we think back, I mean, how long have we known each other? 10, 12, 14 years. We've probably had coffee at some pretty interesting, pretty wacky places along the way. That being probably the most weird one.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's probably going to be the theme as we go forward with some of these podcasts. Not only have Paul and I had coffee in some pretty wacky places, but we're very fortunate to have had coffee with some quite extraordinary people. And I think, over the next few months, we're going to bring some of those people back in and perhaps encourage you all to have a coffee with us with some of these weird and wonderful people, but more of that later. But Paul, I think at the moment you're leaving a massive hole in this conversation because unless I'm hugely mistaken, you're a vet. Paul is a vet, by the way. He's old and grey and has been to war, but I actually mean a veterinary surgeon. So on the basis that you're usually somebody that likes to fiddle with cows, what on earth were you doing in Afghanistan?
Well, that was weird because I didn't tell anyone in the military that I was a veterinary surgeon. I kept that as quiet as possible. Yeah, I many years ago, before I became a veterinary surgeon, I was in the military. I then cheered my mum up a lot by leaving the military and going to vet school, becoming a vet, becoming a cow vet, but keeping my hand in, metaphorically, with the military, and was called up as a reserve officer. And so I went out with the Grenadier Guards, and went out there and spent 6-7 months over there with them. There was only one time, I have to say, there was only one time that my mask.
This is a dog story. This is my favorite.
Yeah, I had never told anyone what I did. I kept that super quiet as what I was doing back at home because didn't want them to judge and make an opinion of who I was, what I was. But we were out on patrol, and our dog collapses with heat exhaustion, and everyone's like, what are we going to do? It's a long way to carry the dog.
Guys, so I should probably interrupt just for a minute here. What Paul's talking about, by the way, is a dog that goes to help the guys find explosives. He didn't take his pet dog with him to Afghanistan.
Well, if you've ever met my pet dog, you'll know that that's not a great idea. I'm not good at training dogs, I have to say. But anyway, yeah, this dog collapses with heat exhaustion, and everyone's, what are we going to do? Do we get a vet out, etc.? And I was like, guys, I'm a vet, and nobody believed me. Nobody believed me as I jumped in there. Managed to run some fluids in, sorted it out, had a chat, and everyone just sort of stood there and thought, is he bluffing? Is he just massively bluffing here, or does he actually know what he's doing? So that was the one time my mask slipped.
I think for me, obviously, we're kind of leading up to a bit of a theme here, and the point is, Paul, that you set an opportunity. You wanted to go back and serve and to go and do something, so you did, and you did that because you could. And in fact, now Paul and I, we run Sandstone together, and probably one of the sort of core values of what we do is what we call a because I can mindset. And really, that's what we want to talk about over the coming, podcasts that are coming up, is this whole attitude of you can do pretty much whatever you want to if you set your mind to it, do the intelligence from the information, and work out what's going around you. And I think, Paul, that probably sums us up, doesn't it? Really, and I think we've probably met some extraordinary people that share that mindset.
Well, I think the fun thing about us is that we're probably not very good at an awful lot of different things. And the really annoying thing is when Tim or I often, I'm sitting there having a chat with Tim, we'll just come up with a silly idea. And normally with most people, the next morning we forget about it. But annoyingly with Tim, we end up doing it. We end up, going and having a chat, finding the people who know what it really means to do it, who really can do it, the experts, and diving in and having a go. So I genuinely see myself as someone who's an amateur or having a go at lots and lots of different things, and luckily along the way sort of met some really cool, really interesting people. The Matterhorn would be a fantastic example of, I am not a mountaineer, but we thought, wouldn't it be a great idea? And off we went.
Yeah, and I think the Matterhorn is probably going to be the subject of our next podcast. That was a pretty scary couple of days for both of us. I think the other, Paul, something you said to me the other day, and I think it's really interesting at the minute, is all of these people we know, none of them have followed what we would necessarily call a conventional pathway. And I think for me at the moment, that's something that's really, really important. I was quite enraged the other day to hear on the news that apparently the current generation of children have already lost £40,000 of future income. Based on what? And why are we putting that message out at the moment? And I think one of the things we're going to bring out, and I think we're both pretty good examples of that, Paul, actually, is that just because the road we're on at the minute isn't the one we planned it to be, or it doesn't look quite like how we thought it was going to look like, absolutely doesn't mean that you're not going to achieve your goal, that you're not going to have a great career or some great adventures. And I think the people we're going to talk to over the next few sort of podcasts probably all share that in common, don't you think?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having a chat with quite a few of them who've all got this, because I can, or just saying yes, having a go. I think a lot of us, if you just say, yeah, I'll have a go. Yeah, I'm going to do that because I can. A lot of the time you can achieve some pretty awesome stuff. And hopefully as we go through the podcasts, we'll talk to these cool people who've really got the expertise to share what they've been doing.
And I think, just to give you all a bit of a taste, guys, as we kind of bring this one to a close, I guess. But we've got loads of friends, ambassadors of Sandstone. We've got the Winthrop sisters that you may or may not have heard of, and these are two girls that live in the back of a van all winter in order to be able to chase their dream of racing for their country on their skis and potentially chasing the sort of Winter Olympic dream. You're going to hear from Ed Drake shortly. Ed is an ex-Olympic downhill skier, now commentator. He's the guy responsible for us setting up a podcast. That's a story for another day. People like Mandy Hickson, female fighter pilot, Colin Gregor, the ex-Scottish Sevens captain, to name but a few as we go forward.
So, Tim, these podcasts, they're going to be about 15 minutes or so long. Why?
Well, we decided that actually taking some advice from our favorite skier, Ed Drake, who does the ski racing podcast, and he seemed to think that most people listen to their podcasts when they go for a run or when they do some exercise or occasionally in the car. We quite like the idea at the moment of going for a run. So, of course, our assumption was that, they'd been somewhere in the region of an hour and a half, maybe something like that, until Paul actually quietly pointed out to me that in this day and age, unfortunately for us getting old, that a run was now somewhere in the region of 15 to 20 minutes.
So hopefully 15 to 20 minutes of Tim and I talking will distract you enough from the pain of being out there jogging along. Yeah. So
we're thinking, guys, if you can cover maybe sort of 5K during one of our podcasts, you've got it about right. So, guys, thank you very much. Listening next time, Because I Can podcast. Let's see where this goes.